The only person who doesn't care who you are is often the one who changes your life forever. The first bell of the morning had barely echoed across Maple Grove Elementary when a sleek black sedan rolled quietly toward the front entrance, its polished finish reflecting the golden glow of an early September sunrise. Parents paused in mid-conversation. Teachers standing near the crosswalk exchanged quick glances. Even the crossing guards straightened a little as the unfamiliar luxury car eased to a stop beside the curb. A woman stepped out with effortless confidence, wearing a tailored navy blazer over a simple cream blouse, her long blonde hair catching the cool morning breeze. She carried no entourage, no photographers, no visible signs that she was one of the wealthiest women in America. Yet almost everyone seemed to recognize her. Whispered voices drifted through the crisp air. "That's Victoria Hayes, the CEO. What is she doing here?" Victoria smiled politely at the curious looks, but kept her attention on the little boy climbing carefully out of the back seat. "Backpack?" she asked softly. "Got it," he answered with a grin before taking her hand. A few yards away, an aging blue Ford pickup rumbled into the school parking lot, its paint faded by countless summers beneath the Colorado sun. Ethan Brooks shut off the engine and glanced toward the passenger seat. "Ready, kiddo?" Lily Brooks beamed, adjusting the pink backpack that looked almost as old as the truck itself. "Daddy, today's our day." Ethan smiled warmly. "Then we'd better not be late." They crossed the parking lot together, Lily happily swinging his hand while Ethan balanced her lunchbox beneath one arm. He noticed a stack of colorful drawings suddenly slip from the hands of the elegant woman ahead as a playful gust of wind scattered them across the sidewalk. Without hesitation, he released Lily's hand and knelt to gather the papers before they could drift into the street. "Looks like the wind wanted to be an artist too," he said with an easy smile, carefully handing the drawings back. Victoria looked genuinely surprised. For a brief second, she studied the grease beneath his fingernails, the worn work boots, the faded denim jacket, and the calm kindness in his eyes. "Thank you," she replied. "These mean a lot to my son." Ethan simply nodded. Kids always know what matters. He tipped an imaginary hat toward the boy. "Good luck in class, buddy." Then he turned back to Lily as though nothing remarkable had happened. No request for her name. No double take. No hint of recognition. Victoria watched him walk away through the growing crowd while conversations quietly resumed around her. For years, she had been greeted with admiration, ambition, curiosity, or carefully rehearsed politeness. This was different. This man had looked at her the way people used to before magazines placed her face on their covers. As Lily skipped toward the front doors, she looked back and waved excitedly. Ethan waved back with a quiet smile before heading toward his truck, already thinking about the long day waiting at the repair shop. He never noticed Victoria still standing near the entrance, her eyes following him until the old pickup disappeared beyond the maple trees. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories don't begin with fireworks or grand speeches. Sometimes they begin with a father picking up a handful of children's drawings, unaware that the woman thanking him could buy half the city, and completely unaware that this ordinary school morning had already begun changing both of their lives. The afternoon sun settled warmly over Brooks Auto Repair, turning the weathered brick walls a soft shade of amber as Ethan Brooks slid beneath an aging pickup truck balanced carefully on the hydraulic lift. The familiar scent of motor oil, warm steel, and fresh coffee filled the small garage, creating the kind of quiet comfort that years of honest work could build. Country music played softly from an old radio sitting on a dusty shelf while the large ceiling fan hummed overhead, pushing away the lingering summer heat. Ethan tightened the final bolt with practiced hands before lowering the truck back onto the concrete floor. His customer, an elderly retired teacher named Mrs. Dawson, smiled with relief as he handed her the keys. "You could have charged me for a whole new suspension," she said. Ethan shook his head gently. It only needed one worn part. No reason to replace what is still doing its job. She laughed softly. "You remind me that honesty still exists." After she drove away, Ethan wiped his hands on a clean shop towel before opening a small notebook resting beside the register. Every expense, every payment, every school supply, every grocery receipt was written carefully in neat handwriting. He studied the numbers for a quiet moment before closing the notebook with a peaceful smile. There was never much left at the end of each month, but there was always enough. Enough to keep the lights on. Enough to keep Lily smiling. Enough to sleep well at night. Just after 3 o'clock, the familiar school dismissal bell echoed faintly across town. Ethan locked the office door, climbed into his old pickup, and made the short drive back to Maple Grove Elementary. Children poured through the front entrance carrying backpacks almost as large as themselves, laughter filling the crisp afternoon air. Lily spotted him immediately. "Daddy," she called happily before running across the sidewalk and wrapping both arms around him. Ethan knelt to her height. "How was art day?" Lily carefully pulled a colorful painting from her folder. Bright blue skies stretched over a little red house beside a field of wildflowers. 2 smiling figures stood hand in hand beneath a giant maple tree. "That is us," she explained proudly. Ethan smiled as though she had handed him the greatest masterpiece in the world. "I think this belongs on our refrigerator." Before they reached the truck, another child came jogging toward them. It was the same boy Ethan had seen that morning. "Mom says thank you again," he said politely, "for saving my pictures." Ethan smiled. "Tell your mom she is very welcome." The boy nodded before running toward the waiting black sedan, where Victoria Hayes stood beside the open door. She looked across the parking lot just as Ethan looked up. Their eyes met for only a heartbeat. She offered a warm smile of quiet gratitude. Ethan returned the gesture with an easy nod before helping Lily climb into the truck. There was no awkwardness, no attempt to impress, no expectation of another conversation. As Victoria watched the faded pickup disappear onto the tree-lined street once again, something quietly unsettled her heart. Board meetings had taught her how to measure profit. Investors had taught her how to measure success. Headlines had taught her how to measure influence. Yet standing outside a neighborhood elementary school, she realized she had no idea how to measure the quiet strength of a father who expected nothing in return for simply doing what kindness required. For the second time that day, she found herself wondering about the man who seemed completely untouched by everything the rest of the world spent its life chasing. 3 mornings later, the cool mountain air carried the first hints of autumn as bright yellow school buses lined the curb outside Maple Grove Elementary. Children hurried through the front entrance with backpacks bouncing against their shoulders while parents gathered beneath the tall maple trees, exchanging cheerful greetings before another busy day began. Ethan Brooks parked his old pickup in the same corner of the lot he always used. Lily climbed out carrying a carefully wrapped shoebox decorated with blue ribbons and hand-painted stars. "Do not forget," she whispered with a grin. "Today is our classroom kindness project." Ethan smiled. "How could I forget? You worked on that box for 2 whole evenings." Lily nodded proudly. Everybody put something nice inside for another student. As they reached the front sidewalk, they noticed several teachers looking toward the playground with concerned expressions. A little girl had slipped while chasing a loose soccer ball across the damp grass. She sat quietly near the edge of the playground, holding one ankle, trying very hard not to cry, while several frightened classmates stood nearby, unsure of what to do. Ethan walked over without rushing, lowering himself beside her so his voice stayed calm and reassuring. "May I take a look?" The little girl nodded. He examined her shoe carefully before smiling. "I think your ankle just twisted a little. Let's not stand up too fast." He removed a small, reusable cold pack from the lunch cooler he always kept inside his truck for long work days and wrapped it gently in a clean towel before placing it against her ankle. "There we go. Nice and easy." One teacher knelt beside him. "Thank you. The school nurse is on her way." Ethan simply nodded. "She will know exactly what to do. I just wanted to help keep her comfortable." The frightened child slowly relaxed, taking a deeper breath as her tears disappeared. A few feet away, Victoria Hayes had just stepped through the school gate with her son, Noah. She stopped without saying a word. There was no crowd around Ethan. No dramatic moment. No one applauded. He spoke softly to the child as though she were his own daughter, never trying to draw attention to himself. Lily quietly stood beside him, gently holding the little girl's hand until the nurse arrived with a wheelchair. "You were very brave," Lily whispered. The little girl smiled through watery eyes. "Thank you." The nurse thanked Ethan for staying calm and helping before carefully escorting the student inside for further evaluation. Ethan stood, brushed a little grass from his jeans, and looked toward Lily. "Ready for class?" She nodded happily. "Daddy, you always know what to do." Ethan laughed softly. "No, sweetheart. I just try to be kind first. Usually that is a good place to start." Victoria heard every word. She had spent years sitting across polished conference tables where people solved problems with contracts, negotiations, and impressive presentations. Yet this ordinary mechanic had eased a frightened child's fear with nothing more than patience, gentleness, and quiet confidence. As Ethan and Lily disappeared through the school doors, Victoria remained standing beneath the maple trees, the morning breeze lifting a few strands of her blonde hair. For reasons she could not fully explain, the image stayed with her long after the school bell rang. It was not the small act itself that lingered in her mind. It was the way he never waited to be thanked, never looked around to see who had noticed, and never behaved as though kindness deserved recognition. Somewhere deep inside her heart, a quiet question had begun to grow. Who was this man whose greatest strength seemed to be that he never needed anyone else to see it? By Friday afternoon, gray clouds had quietly gathered above Maple Grove, covering the Colorado sky with a soft blanket that promised rain before sunset. Parents waited beneath the covered entrance of the school, while children filled the sidewalks with excited chatter about the coming weekend. Ethan Brooks leaned comfortably against his old pickup, sipping coffee from a worn stainless steel mug, while Lily laughed with her classmates nearby. Across the parking lot, Victoria Hayes finished a brief business call before slipping her phone into her handbag. She had flown back from Denver less than an hour earlier after an early board meeting, determined to arrive in time to pick up Noah herself instead of sending a driver. The meeting had filled her morning with forecasts, acquisitions, and numbers stretching far beyond imagination. Yet somehow the quiet routine outside an elementary school felt more important than everything she had discussed inside a glass conference room. The dismissal bell rang, and children poured through the front doors carrying artwork, homework folders, and weekend excitement. Noah spotted his mother and waved enthusiastically before jogging toward her. At that same moment, a steady rain began falling across the parking lot, first as scattered drops, then as a gentle curtain that blurred the distant hills. Parents hurried toward their vehicles as umbrellas opened in every direction. Victoria reached into the back seat of her sedan for an umbrella, but before she could open it, the engine refused to start. She pressed the ignition again. Nothing. The dashboard lights flickered once before fading into silence. She frowned, trying once more with the same result. Noah looked up nervously. "Mom, is something wrong?" Victoria forced a reassuring smile. "Probably just something small." A few nearby parents offered sympathetic looks before continuing through the rain. Ethan noticed the stalled sedan while helping Lily climb into his truck. Without hesitation, he grabbed his old rain jacket from behind the seat and walked calmly across the wet pavement. "Would you mind if I take a quick look?" he asked politely. Victoria recognized his familiar voice immediately and smiled with quiet relief. "Only if I am not interrupting your evening." Ethan chuckled softly. Cars did not usually wait for convenient schedules. He opened the hood and studied the engine with patient attention while rain tapped gently against the metal. Within moments, he noticed a loose battery connection that had shifted after weeks of rough mountain roads. Tightening the terminal with a small wrench from his truck, he closed the hood and nodded toward the driver's seat. "Try it now." Victoria turned the key once more. The engine came alive instantly with its smooth, familiar hum. Noah clapped happily from the back seat. "You fixed it." Ethan smiled. It was a simple connection. Nothing serious. Victoria reached into her purse. "Please let me pay you for your time." Ethan shook his head before she could remove her wallet. "You do not owe me anything. I would hope someone would do the same for Lily someday." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Rain continued falling around them, washing dust from the parking lot and filling the air with the clean scent of wet pine and fresh earth. Victoria slowly lowered her hand. "Then at least let me buy you coffee sometime." Ethan smiled with the same quiet warmth she had come to recognize. "Maybe one day, but today you should get Noah home before the rain gets any heavier." He tipped his head politely, returned to his pickup, and drove away with Lily waving cheerfully through the passenger window. Victoria remained in the driver's seat for another long moment, watching the old blue truck disappear through the rain. For the third time in a single week, the one man who asked for nothing had quietly given her something she could not remember finding anywhere else. A simple reminder that genuine character often arrived without introduction, without recognition, and without expecting anything in return. The following Tuesday arrived with a sky so clear that the distant Rocky Mountains seemed close enough to touch, their snow-covered peaks glowing beneath the bright morning sun. Life had quietly returned to its familiar rhythm. Ethan Brooks spent his mornings repairing engines, his afternoons picking up Lily from school, and his evenings helping her with homework before reading one chapter from her favorite adventure book. It was a simple routine, but it was one he treasured more than anything money could ever buy. Across town, Victoria Hayes sat in the back of her sedan reviewing financial reports that would shape the future of a company employing thousands of people. Yet, every few minutes her attention drifted away from the numbers on the screen. She found herself thinking about an old blue pickup, a quiet mechanic, and a kindness that had never asked for recognition. As the car approached Maple Grove Elementary for another afternoon dismissal, she made an unexpected decision. "Cancel my 4:30 meeting," she told her assistant over the phone. "Reschedule it for tomorrow." It was a brief silence. "Of course, Miss Hayes. Is everything all right?" Victoria smiled softly as she looked through the window toward the school entrance. "Yes." Something more important came up. When the final bell rang, children hurried outside, carrying colorful posters for the upcoming Fall Family Festival. Lily and Noah walked side by side, laughing about a classroom science project that had ended with baking soda bubbling over the edge of a paper volcano. Ethan greeted both children with the same warm smile. "Looks like someone had a successful day." Noah grinned proudly. "Our volcano made the biggest eruption." Victoria laughed. "I hope it stayed inside the classroom." Before Noah could answer, the school principal approached carrying a clipboard. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "I hope you do not mind me asking, but several parents mentioned that you restored an old pickup for the town parade last year." Ethan nodded modestly. "Just a weekend project." The principal smiled. "The Fall Family Festival Committee borrowed a 1965 Mustang convertible for the event, but it has developed a mechanical problem. We were hoping it could be displayed during the festival, but no one has been able to get it running." Ethan considered the request for only a moment. "If someone can bring it by the garage, I will." "Take a look." Victoria listened quietly before speaking. "That Mustang belongs to a private collection managed by my company. I arranged for it to be loaned to the school." Ethan looked pleasantly surprised, though not because of who she was. "Well, then I hope we can have it ready before the festival. Cars like that deserve to be driven, not hidden away." Victoria smiled. "Would you mind if I stopped by the garage tomorrow after work? I would like to see how the restoration goes." Ethan shrugged with an easy smile. "You are welcome anytime. It is not much to look at, but the coffee is usually fresh." Lily giggled. "Daddy makes the best hot chocolate, too." Noah immediately looked at his mother. "Can we go?" Victoria laughed, a genuine laugh untouched by boardrooms or business headlines. "I think we can manage that." As the families headed toward their vehicles beneath the warm afternoon sunlight, neither Ethan nor the children noticed the black SUV that had quietly parked across the street. A local business reporter lowered a camera after recognizing Victoria Hayes outside the neighborhood school. One photograph was all it took before a single innocent afternoon began moving toward a story far bigger than anyone standing in that parking lot could possibly imagine. The next afternoon, Brooks Auto Repair smelled of fresh coffee, clean steel, and decades of honest work as sunlight poured through the open garage door, painting long golden lines across the concrete floor. Ethan Brooks stood beside the classic 1965 Mustang convertible, carefully polishing the chrome before lifting the hood once again. The engine had not suffered any major damage. Years of sitting and used had simply allowed small problems to gather quietly, one after another. Ethan believed people were often the same way. Most things only needed patience instead of replacing. Just after 4 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. Victoria Hayes stepped out with Noah, both dressed far more casually than during their first meeting at the school. Noah hurried toward the Mustang with wide eyes. "It looks amazing." Ethan smiled. "She has good bones. She only needed someone willing to listen." Noah laughed. "Cars can talk." Lily answered before Ethan could. "Daddy says every engine tells a story if you pay attention." Victoria watched the exchange with quiet admiration. It had been years since she had spent an afternoon without checking stock prices or answering urgent messages. Today her phone remained inside her purse. Ethan handed Noah a clean shop towel. "Would you like to help polish the front bumper?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, sir." Lily immediately joined him, and soon the two children were laughing together while comparing who could make the chrome shine brighter. Victoria stepped closer to Ethan as he carefully adjusted a small engine component. "I've been meaning to ask you something," she said softly. "How did you learn all of this?" Ethan tightened one final bolt before answering. "My father owned this garage before I did. I started handing him tools when I was about Lily's age. He always said that if you fix something with care, you are really taking care of the person who depends on it." Victoria looked around the modest garage. Every shelf was organized. Every tool had its place. Family photographs rested beside old trophies from local car shows. Nothing looked expensive, yet everything reflected quiet pride. "You never wanted something bigger?" she asked. Ethan smiled without looking away from the engine. "Bigger is not always better. This garage lets me be there when Lily gets out of school, every day. I would not trade that for a taller building or a nicer office." Before Victoria could reply, the sound of a camera shutter echoed from outside. Another followed, then another. Ethan looked toward the open garage door, where two reporters and a photographer stood across the street with long camera lenses pointed directly at them. Victoria immediately recognized one of the local business journalists. She understood exactly why they had come. The photograph taken outside the school had spread quickly through regional media, and speculation had already begun. One reporter called out politely, "Ms. Hayes, are you considering a new investment in the community?" Another asked, "Is this mechanic joining one of your companies?" Ethan looked confused. He glanced at Victoria, then back toward the reporters. "Why are they asking you those questions?" Victoria hesitated for only a second before answering honestly. "Because I'm the chief executive officer of Hayes Global." Silence settled gently inside the garage. Ethan did not speak immediately. Instead, he looked toward the children laughing beside the Mustang, completely unaware that the quiet afternoons they had begun to enjoy together had suddenly become part of a story the outside world was eager to tell. The reporters left as quietly as they had arrived, but the stillness they left behind felt heavier than the sound of their cameras. Ethan Brooks stood beside the open hood of the Mustang, looking at the polished engine without truly seeing it. Across the garage, Lily and Noah continued laughing as they compared whose reflection looked clearer in the freshly cleaned chrome bumper. Their innocent voices floated through the room like a reminder that children rarely cared about titles or fortunes. Victoria Hayes stepped closer, her expression calm but sincere. "I should have told you sooner," she said softly. Ethan folded the shop towel in his hands before placing it neatly on the workbench. "You never lied to me." He paused for a moment before meeting her eyes. "You just never mentioned it. Victoria Nadif. I wanted you to know me before you knew my position." Ethan gave a small, understanding smile. Yet something had quietly changed. It was not disappointment. It was caution. He had spent years protecting the peaceful life he had built for Lily, and experience had taught him that attention from the outside world often arrived with expectations that ordinary families never asked for. After a long silence, he closed the hood of the Mustang with gentle care. "The car will be ready for the festival tomorrow." Victoria noticed that he did not say anything about seeing her again. Noah walked over carrying a polishing cloth. "Mr. Brooks, can Lily and I still sit in the Mustang tomorrow?" Ethan smiled warmly at the boy. If the principal says yes, I think that sounds like a pretty good plan. Lily looked between the two. Adults with quiet curiosity. Children often sensed changes long before they understood them. As Victoria thanked Ethan once more, she realized he had become more formal. His smile remained kind, but the comfortable ease that had existed between them had retreated behind careful politeness. On the drive home, Noah looked out the window before asking, "Mom, did we do something wrong?" Victoria glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Why would you think that? Mr. Brooks seemed different today." Victoria breathed slowly before answering. "Sometimes people need time when they learn something unexpected." Noah nodded thoughtfully. "I hope he is not mad." "I do not think he is angry," Victoria replied. "I think he is trying to protect something important." That evening, Ethan and Lily shared homemade vegetable soup at their small kitchen table, while soft rain tapped gently against the windows. Lily looked up from her bowl. "Daddy, Noah said his mom has a really big company." Ethan smiled faintly. "She does." Lily tilted her head. "Does that change anything?" Ethan reached across the table and squeezed her little hand. "It should never change how we treat people. Rich or poor, every person deserves the same respect." Lily smiled. "That is what Grandma always used to say." Ethan looked toward the framed family photograph resting on the kitchen counter and quietly nodded. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ethan sat alone on the front porch with a warm mug of coffee resting between his hands. The neighborhood was peaceful. Porch lights glowed softly beneath the clear autumn sky, while distant crickets filled the cool evening air. He was genuinely happy that Victoria had found success, yet he could not ignore the uneasy feeling growing inside him. Their worlds were separated by more than money. One life belonged to headlines, investors, and public attention. The other belonged to school mornings, repair manuals, and quiet evenings at home. As he watched a single maple leaf drift gently across the porch steps, Ethan made a silent decision. For Lily's sake and for his own peace, he would keep a respectful distance, even if a part of his heart already wondered whether walking away would be far more difficult than he wanted to admit. The Saturday of the Fall Family Festival arrived beneath a brilliant blue sky, and Maple Grove Elementary looked more like a neighborhood celebration than a school. White tents lined the playground. Local musicians tuned their guitars near the cafeteria, and the smell of fresh popcorn, barbecue, and homemade apple pie drifted through the cool autumn air. Children raced across the football field with painted faces, while volunteers welcomed families with warm smiles and handwritten maps of the day's events. Ethan Brooks arrived early with Lily, helping unload folding tables before quietly positioning the restored 1965 Mustang near the center of the festival grounds. The polished chrome reflected the morning sunlight so perfectly that visitors stopped to admire it before they even noticed the handmade banner hanging above it. Ethan wiped away one last fingerprint with a clean cloth before stepping back. "Now she finally looks ready to smile again," he said softly. Lily grinned. "Just like you always say." A few minutes later, Victoria Hayes and Noah walked through the school entrance dressed in comfortable blue jeans, light sweaters, and sneakers. There were no security guards nearby, no formal business attire, and no assistants carrying schedules. For the first time in many years, Victoria looked like every other parent arriving for a school event. Several people recognized her, but quickly realized she wanted nothing more than to enjoy the day with her son. Noah immediately ran toward Lily. "Come see the science booths." The two children disappeared into the crowd, laughing together as though they had known each other for years. Victoria approached the Mustang, where Ethan was answering questions from curious parents about the restoration. When the small crowd moved on, she smiled gently. "It looks even better than I imagined." Ethan nodded appreciatively. She deserved another chance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Soft music floated across the playground while colorful leaves drifted lazily from the maple trees overhead. Finally, Victoria broke the silence. I've been thinking about our conversation." Ethan looked toward the children before answering. "So have I." Victoria folded her hands quietly. "I know my life probably seems very different from yours." Ethan gave a small smile. "It is different." She nodded, "but not in the ways that matter most." Before Ethan could respond, Lily and Noah came running back together, carrying 2 paper cups of fresh apple cider. Lily handed one to her father before turning toward Victoria with complete innocence. "Miss Hayes, can I tell you something?" Victoria smiled warmly. "Of course." Lily looked at her with the same honesty that only a child could offer. "My daddy only trusts kind people. He says you can always tell who they are because they help when nobody is watching." Victoria felt her eyes soften as she knelt to Lily's height. "Your father is a very wise man." Lily smiled proudly. "I think you're kind too." Ethan looked away for a brief moment, quietly touched by words he had never expected to hear. Victoria stood again and spoke gently enough that only Ethan could hear. "I'm not asking you to become part of my world." She paused before continuing. "I'm hoping to become part of yours, if you ever decide there is room for Noah and me." Ethan looked around the festival. Parents laughed together beneath colorful tents. Teachers greeted every family by name. Lily and Noah chased falling leaves with carefree joy. Everything that truly mattered was already here. For the first time since learning who Victoria really was, he realized she had never tried to impress him with wealth, influence, or success. She had simply continued showing up as a mother, one quiet afternoon at a time. And standing beneath the golden leaves of Maple Grove Elementary, the distance between their 2 worlds suddenly felt much smaller than the kindness that had quietly brought them together. Over the weeks that followed, nothing extraordinary happened in the way newspapers usually defined extraordinary, and perhaps that was exactly why everything changed. Victoria Hayes continued bringing Noah to Maple Grove Elementary herself whenever her schedule allowed. She no longer measured every hour by business meetings or quarterly reports. Instead, she found herself looking forward to school concerts, weekend soccer games, library book fairs, and the quiet conversations that naturally grew between parents waiting beneath the maple trees. Ethan Brooks never asked about her company, her investments, or the world that had made her famous. He asked whether Noah enjoyed science class, whether she had remembered to eat lunch during a busy day, and whether she would like another cup of fresh coffee while the children finished their homework together at the garage office. One crisp evening in late October, the school hosted its annual Family Appreciation Night inside the decorated gymnasium. Handmade paper leaves covered the walls. Children sang cheerful songs, and folding chairs filled quickly with proud parents and grandparents. Ethan arrived wearing his clean denim shirt, Lily holding tightly to his hand. Victoria and Noah found seats only a few rows away. There was no reserved section, no special treatment, and no announcement recognizing the most successful business leader in the room. That suited Victoria perfectly. She had discovered that the quiet moments no one applauded often became the ones people remembered forever. After the student performances ended, families gathered outside beneath strings of warm lights hanging across the courtyard. Teachers thanked volunteers while children laughed around tables filled with homemade cookies and hot apple cider. Lily and Noah wandered toward the old maple tree near the playground, where colorful leaves covered the ground like a golden blanket. They looked back at their parents before exchanging a quick smile that only children seemed capable of planning without words. Lily reached for Ethan's hand. Noah reached for Victoria's. Then, without saying anything, the 2 children gently pulled them toward one another until the 4 of them stood together beneath the softly glowing lights. Ethan looked down at Lily with quiet surprise. Noah grinned proudly. "Families are supposed to stand together for pictures," he said. Victoria laughed softly, her eyes bright with emotion. "I think he has a point." Ethan smiled. The careful distance he had protected for so long, finally giving way to peaceful acceptance. He looked at Victoria, not as a celebrated executive or one of the wealthiest women in the country, but as the mother who had chosen to keep showing up with kindness, patience, and humility. Victoria met his eyes with the same quiet honesty that had first appeared the day he picked up a handful of children's drawings without asking who she was. "I think we're already becoming the kind of family our children believe we can be," she whispered. Ethan nodded gently, his smile carrying the calm certainty of a man who no longer feared the distance between 2 different worlds. Around them, Conversations gradually faded as several parents noticed the simple moment unfolding beneath the maple tree. There was no grand announcement, no expensive celebration, and no promise spoken for the crowd to hear. There were only two devoted parents, two happy children, and the quiet understanding that respect had become friendship, friendship had become trust, and trust had quietly opened the door to love. Sometimes the greatest miracles never arrive with flashing lights or headlines. Sometimes they begin with a father who chooses kindness without expecting recognition, a mother who chooses humility over status, and two children whose simple faith reminds the adults around them that dignity, grace, and second chances are still the strongest foundations any family can ever build. Beneath the gentle autumn sky, surrounded by laughter instead of applause, the world seemed to grow wonderfully still, and in that peaceful silence, every heart already knew the story had found exactly the ending it deserved.